The night I found out about my husband's double life, I was folding laundry in our bedroom. Nothing dramatic. Just me, cross-legged on the bed, pairing socks and listening to the low, steady hum of the dryer downstairs. The room smelled faintly of fabric softener, warm cotton, and the lavender candle I'd lit earlier. It was an ordinary night in every possible way, until it wasn't. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. A quick vibration, nothing unusual. Normally, I never snoop. In fact, I used to pride myself on the trust between us. I was the wife who never checked call logs, never scrolled through text messages, never doubted. But that night, something, a whisper in my gut, a strange heaviness in my chest, told me to look. I hesitated. My hand hovered over the phone, and for a moment I almost laughed at myself. You're being paranoid, I thought. He's probably getting a notification from the group chat with his coworkers. But my instincts refused to let me ignore it. So I picked it up. The message preview froze me in place. I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Same place, same time. At first, I convinced myself it was spam. A scam. A wrong number. Some automated message meant for someone else. My heart thudded as I tapped the screen, praying I'd find a simple explanation. But when I opened the thread, my world collapsed. There were months of texts, thousands of words, dozens of pictures, plans carefully arranged, excuses crafted to sneak away, words of affection that had never been meant for me. I remember staring at one photo, her face smiling back at the camera, his reflection visible in her sunglasses, and my breath caught in my throat. It was undeniable. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was deliberate. Ongoing. A second life I hadn't even suspected. In that moment, the air in the room felt heavier. The walls, the bed, even the neat little stacks of folded laundry surrounding me, everything looked the same, but none of it felt real anymore. It was as though the life I thought I was living had been peeled back, revealing a rotten layer underneath. My husband. The man I had built a life with for almost 12 years. The father of my children. My partner in every sense of the word. He wasn't just mine. He wasn't who I thought he was. My hands started trembling so badly that I dropped the phone. It landed face down on the carpet with a dull thud, the screen still glowing. I pressed both palms against my knees, trying to steady myself, but I couldn't stop shaking. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But all I could do was sit there in silence, staring at the half-folded pile of laundry like it held the answers. And that was just the beginning. When I met Daniel, I was 24, fresh out of grad school, and trying to find my footing in Chicago. I worked at a small marketing firm, the kind where you wore too many hats and got paid too little, but I was grateful. I was still living with a roommate in a drafty apartment that rattled every time the train passed by, still eating boxed mac and cheese 3 nights a week, still figuring out how to make adulthood feel less like pretending. I wanted stability, though I didn't quite know what that looked like. Daniel was introduced to me through a mutual friend at a housewarming party. I remember the night clearly, the clink of beer bottles, the muffled music from an old stereo, the faint smell of takeout lingering in the air. He wasn't flashy, not the loudest guy in the room. If anything, he blended into the background at first. But he had this steady confidence, the kind that made you feel calmer just being near him. When we started talking, he listened, really listened, in a way that made me feel like my words carried more weight than they actually did. We started dating quickly after that. Our first date was at a local diner, the kind with sticky menus and bottomless coffee. He ordered a cheeseburger. I ordered pancakes even though it was 8 p.m. He grinned at me across the booth, shook his head, and said, "You're my kind of girl." It was cheesy, but I remember blushing, laughing, and tucking my hair behind my ear like I was still a teenager. He asked questions that night, about my job, my family, my dreams, and I found myself telling him things I didn't normally share on a first date. By the time the waitress dropped the check, I knew I'd see him again. The years that followed were everything I thought I wanted. We got married at a small vineyard in Michigan, surrounded by the colors of early autumn. My dad walked me down the aisle. My mom cried through the entire ceremony, clutching tissues that left little shreds of white all over her dress. The air smelled of grapes and crisp leaves, and when Daniel whispered, "You look beautiful," so softly I almost thought I imagined it, I remember thinking, this is the start of forever. Our early married life was a blur of building, buying our first modest condo with the squeaky floors and the neighbors who played loud music, adopting a rescue dog we named Cooper, late nights painting the kitchen ourselves, and cheap takeout dinners when we were too tired to cook. We had no money for big vacations, so our getaways were long drives up the coast of Lake Michigan, stopping at diners and antique shops, laughing at things we couldn't afford but dreamed about someday owning. I thought we were building a life brick by brick, one small memory at a time. We argued sometimes, but never about anything big. Whose turn it was to do the dishes? Whether the thermostat was too high. He handled the bills, I handled the groceries and laundry. He liked control, and I didn't mind letting him take the reins on finances. I told myself it was teamwork. It felt like balance. When we had our daughter, Emily, 5 years into our marriage, I thought life couldn't get fuller. She was born in the dead of winter, snow piled outside the hospital window, the city muffled and quiet beneath white drifts. Daniel held her with tears in his eyes, swearing she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. I believed him. In that sterile hospital room, with our newborn's tiny cries echoing around us, I thought we had everything we'd ever need. The years after Emily's birth fell into a rhythm that was both exhausting and comforting. Our routines became ordinary in the best way: school drop-offs, soccer practices, grocery runs, family pizza nights on Fridays. Saturdays were for errands and playgrounds, Sundays for lazy breakfasts and cartoons on the couch. Sometimes I'd peek into the living room and see Daniel stretched out on the rug, reading bedtime stories to Emily, his voice low and animated, and I'd feel this overwhelming wave of gratitude. I would tell myself, you did it. You found someone dependable. Someone who shows up. My friends often joked that I won the husband lottery. I believed them. Compared to the stories they told, husbands who forgot anniversaries, who left the heavy lifting of parenthood to their wives, who didn't listen, I thought Daniel was different. He worked hard. He provided. He was steady. But if I'm honest, there were signs I ignored. The late nights at work that stretched past dinner, leaving me to put Emily to bed alone more often than I wanted to admit. The weekends he claimed he needed alone time to recharge, taking long drives or disappearing into errands that somehow lasted hours. The fact that he never wanted me to touch his phone, brushing it off with a smile and you know I hate when people mess with my settings. At first, I chalked it up to quirks. Everyone needs space, right? I told myself every marriage had its own rhythm. That couples needed time apart. That his job was demanding. That he just valued his privacy. And in the quiet corners of my mind, when a flicker of doubt rose up, I smothered it with gratitude. Gratitude for the house, for the family, for the security I thought we shared. Sometimes I would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering why he felt so far away even when he was lying right beside me. He'd turn in his sleep, murmuring something I couldn't make out, and I'd convince myself I was being dramatic. After all, he always came home eventually. He never missed Emily's birthday. He remembered anniversaries, even if the celebrations were small. Wasn't that what mattered? Looking back now, I realize how carefully he built two lives. How seamlessly he managed to weave lies into the fabric of our days. And how willingly, almost desperately, I looked the other way. That night with his phone was the crack that shattered everything. I scrolled until my hands shook. The woman's name was Hannah. She wasn't just some fling, she was woven into his schedule. He'd been seeing her for at least a year, maybe longer. They had inside jokes. She knew about his work frustrations, his favorite whiskey, the movie he'd watched last week. Things he hadn't bothered to share with me anymore. I couldn't stop reading, even though each message cut deeper. She sent him photos, not explicit, but intimate in their own way. A picture of her morning coffee with the caption "Thinking of you." A shot of her in a bookstore, holding up a novel he'd once recommended. He responded with hearts, with "Wish I was there," with casual tenderness that once belonged to me. At first, I didn't know what to do. My whole body went cold, like someone had pulled the floor out from under me. He came upstairs 15 minutes later, smelling faintly of beer. I shoved his phone back where I found it and pretended to be half asleep. My heart pounded as he kissed my forehead and slipped into bed beside me like nothing was wrong. I lay stiff as a board, staring at the ceiling in the dark, wondering how long my life had been a lie. The next morning was surreal. I packed Emily's lunch, tied her shoelaces, and smiled through gritted teeth while Daniel sipped his coffee. He was scrolling his phone, probably texting her, while I buttered toast. The clink of the knife against the plate felt deafening. For weeks, I lived in this strange limbo, pretending to be normal while secretly gathering clues. I checked phone bills, noticed unexplained charges on our credit card, dinners, hotels, things that didn't fit into the story of our shared life. I traced his late nights against text timestamps, lining up his excuses with her messages. The puzzle pieces formed an ugly picture. He wasn't just cheating. He was maintaining another version of himself. What gutted me most was reading the lies he fed her. He told Hannah he was separated but still living with me for Emily's sake. He painted me as cold, controlling, the reason he couldn't be fully free. Reading those words, those twisted portrayals of me, made me physically sick. It was like watching myself exist in someone else's story, a villain in the narrative he spun to justify his betrayal. The hardest part was acting normal around Emily. She was only 7, too young to understand. I'd read bedtime stories with her snuggled under my arm while my chest ached with betrayal. She would point at the pictures, ask questions in her soft little voice, and I would nod, smile, and tuck her in with kisses while my insides screamed. I confided in my sister, Rachel, who lives in Ohio. Over the phone, I whispered the whole story while locked in my car in the driveway, the windows fogged from my breath. My voice shook as I told her about the texts, about Hannah, about the lies. Rachel's sharp inhale through the line said everything. She begged me to confront him. "You can't live like this," she said. "You have to protect yourself. Protect Emily." But confrontation felt impossible. What if he left and took half of everything? What if Emily lost her sense of family stability? What if he twisted it back on me and made me look crazy? So I stayed silent. I kept gathering evidence like it was armor. Screenshots, notes, dates. I told myself I needed to be prepared. Meanwhile, Daniel grew bolder. He started working late more often, coming home with flimsy excuses that barely made sense. He guarded his phone like it was an organ, keeping it in his pocket, carrying it into the bathroom, sleeping with it under his pillow. On weekends, he'd claim he was running errands and vanish for hours, returning with nothing but a pack of gum or a random grocery item, as if that proved where he'd been. I became hyper-aware of every detail. The way he hummed in the shower, a tune I didn't recognize, had she sung it to him? The cologne he started wearing, a scent I hadn't bought. The faint smile he sometimes wore when he thought no one was looking. I lived in a constant state of suspicion, reading meaning into everything. One Saturday afternoon, Emily and I went to Target. It was one of those ordinary errands that filled our weekends, a list scribbled on the back of an envelope, her chatter about school and toys. As we pulled into the lot, I saw Daniel's car parked near the entrance. My first instinct was relief. Maybe he was running errands here too. Maybe I was being paranoid. But then I saw him. He wasn't alone. He was walking beside a brunette woman, pushing a cart filled with home goods. They looked like any other couple, casually discussing what to buy. They looked like us. My heart slammed against my ribs so hard I thought I might faint. Emily didn't notice. She was busy asking if we could get a new Barbie. I froze, my hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. My throat closed, and for a split second I considered parking, marching inside, and exposing him right there in front of her. In front of Emily. In front of everyone. But I couldn't. My body betrayed me. Panic took over. I backed out of the spot and drove away before he could see us. Emily never knew. She chatted in the backseat, swinging her legs, blissfully unaware of the storm tearing through me. But I knew. That image haunted me. My husband building a parallel life, aisle by aisle. Picking out pillows and kitchenware with another woman as though our home, our family, wasn't enough. I couldn't unsee it. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his hand on the cat, his head bent toward hers, the easy intimacy of their body language. In the days that followed, I became two people. Outwardly, I was the mother who braided hair, packed lunches, showed up at school events. Inwardly, I was the wife who replayed every moment of her marriage, wondering which parts were real and which were rehearsed. Nights were the worst. Lying beside him in the dark, I would hear the soft rhythm of his breathing and wonder if he ever thought of me at all, or if Hannah filled his dreams instead. And with every passing day, the silence I kept felt heavier, like a weight pressing down on my chest, stealing my breath. I knew I couldn't keep pretending forever. Climax our turning point, tilde 100 words. The confrontation finally came one Sunday night after Emily was asleep. I couldn't take the lies anymore. My chest felt like it was caving in, every breath shallow and sharp. My hands trembled as I wiped down the already clean counters, rehearsing what I was going to say. There was no perfect moment to shatter a marriage, so I created one. I sat him down at the kitchen table. My voice was steadier than I expected when I said, "Daniel, I know." He blinked, feigning confusion. "Know what?" I slid his phone across the table. My fingers were icy, but I forced myself not to flinch. I had printed screenshots of the texts, too, tucked in a manila folder like evidence in a trial. About Hannah. About everything. The silence stretched so long I could hear the refrigerator humming, the ticking of the wall clock suddenly unbearably loud. Finally, his shoulders sagged, the mask slipping. "I didn't mean for you to find out this way." That sentence, "this way," infuriated me. As if the problem wasn't the affair itself, but the fact that I had discovered it. I demanded answers, and he gave half-truths. He admitted he'd been seeing her for 2 years. He claimed he loved us both, but in different ways. He said he felt trapped in marriage, that Hannah gave him an escape, a chance to feel alive again. Alive? I spat, my voice rising. "You have a daughter who worships you, a wife who built a life with you, and you needed someone else to make you feel alive." He pressed his hands to his face, groaning like he was the victim. "You don't understand," he muttered. "No, Daniel, you don't understand. You don't understand what it feels like to kiss our daughter goodnight, knowing you're sneaking off to another woman. You don't understand the humiliation of reading your lies in black and white." His eyes welled up, but I didn't buy the performance anymore. I had seen too much, heard too much. The man in front of me was a stranger. The argument stretched past midnight. I shouted. I cried. My voice cracked until it was raw. I slammed my hands on the table. I accused him of destroying not just my trust, but Emily's entire childhood. He begged for time, swearing he would end things with Hannah. He reached for my hands across the table, but I pulled back like his touch burned. "You can't see betrayal," I told him. "You can't feel it." When I finally walked away from the table, I felt both lighter and heavier. Lighter because the secret was out, heavier because there was no undoing what I had just set in motion. The hardest part was the next morning. Packing Emily's backpack, braiding her hair, and sending her off to school while pretending everything was fine. She hugged both of us at the door, clueless, her little smile wide enough to hide the wreckage behind it. Over the next weeks, Daniel tried to prove he was changing. He left his phone out on the counter, sometimes unlocked, like it was a trophy of transparency. He came straight home from work, no more late-night deadlines. He suggested marriage counseling, his voice soft, hopeful. I agreed, not because I believed him, but because I needed clarity. At counseling, he put on his best act, remorseful husband, desperate to save his family. He said all the right things, he was sorry, he wanted to rebuild, he would never lie again. The therapist nodded, scribbling notes. But I sat there numb, wondering if Hannah was still texting him while we sat on that couch. Some sessions ended in silence, me staring at the floor while Daniel spoke for both of us. Other times, I exploded, listing every lie, every night he claimed to be working late, every holiday memory now poisoned. The counselor tried to mediate, but I could see the flicker of frustration in her eyes too. She knew this was beyond repair. At home, the cracks widened. We'd have good days when Daniel was attentive, helping Emily with homework, cooking dinner. Then the bad days came, when I'd catch him zoning out, phone in hand, and my chest would tighten with suspicion. Even if he wasn't cheating anymore, he had trained me to expect betrayal. Every buzz of his phone still felt like a landmine. Every traffic jam excuse made my stomach twist. Even when he leaned forward, swearing he would earn back my trust, I found myself studying his eyes, searching for cracks in the performance. One night, after Emily was asleep, I drove to Hannah's apartment. I had the address from a billing statement buried in our files. My hands shook on the steering wheel the entire drive. When I arrived, I parked across the street and stared at the brick building. A light was on in one of the upstairs windows, and I imagined him there, the Daniel who belonged to her. I didn't knock. I didn't even get out of the car. I just sat there, heart racing, wondering who he was when he was with her. Was he kinder? More affectionate? Did he laugh the way he used to with me? Or was he the same man, just wearing a different mask? I left without ever stepping out of the car, but the drive home was the clearest I'd felt in months. With every mile, the truth crystallized. I couldn't share him. Not with Hannah, not with anyone. That night, I stood in Emily's doorway longer than usual, watching her sleep, her little body curled beneath her blanket, her stuffed animals tucked close. She deserved a father she could trust, a home not built on lies. And I deserved to stop living like a shadow of myself. The turning point wasn't the confrontation itself. It wasn't the shouting or the tears or the folder of evidence. It was the quiet clarity that followed, the realization that my marriage was already over. The only question left was whether I had the strength to admit it out loud. I filed for separation 6 weeks later. It wasn't easy. Daniel cried, begged, promised again and again. But I had crossed a line inside myself. Once trust is shattered, there's no patching it back together. Explaining it to Emily was the hardest part. We sat her down together in the living room, her stuffed bunny clutched tightly in her arms. I told her mommy and daddy both loved her very much, but we couldn't live in the same house anymore. She cried, asked if it was her fault. My throat closed, but I forced the words out. No, baby. This is not your fault. Not ever. I held her tight, feeling her small shoulders shake, and that moment broke me in ways Daniel's betrayal hadn't. The months that followed were brutal. Lawyers, paperwork, selling the house we once painted together, splitting custody schedules down to the hour. Nights alone in my rented apartment, staring at blank walls after Emily went to bed. I cried into my pillow more times than I can count. I walked through stores and saw couples shopping together and felt a knife twist inside me. Therapy sessions became my lifeline. I poured out the rage, grief, shame, and the guilt that somehow I hadn't seen it sooner. But slowly, painfully, I began to rebuild. At first, it was small things, making myself coffee just the way I liked it, without Daniel's preference overshadowing mine. Choosing furniture for the apartment that felt like me. I leaned on friends who showed up with wine and takeout, who sat with me in silence when words felt too heavy. I took Emily on little adventures, farmers markets where we sampled strawberries, zoo trips where she laughed at the penguins, Sunday pancake rituals where we'd flip lopsided shapes and eat until we were sticky with syrup. Just the two of us, building new traditions. I started running again, something I'd abandoned years earlier. The first run was short, my legs burning, my chest aching. But each mile reminded me I was stronger than I thought. Each drop of sweat felt like a layer of pain leaving my body. Daniel eventually moved in with Hannah. I won't pretend it didn't sting. Seeing him move seamlessly into another home while I was piecing together mine from scratch felt like another slap in the face. But in a twisted way, it validated my decision. He wasn't ready to give up that double life. He had chosen her, and in doing so, he freed me from the illusion I'd been holding onto. Co-parenting was rocky at first. Emily would come home from weekends at Daniel's with questions I wasn't ready for. Why does Daddy live with Miss Hannah? Or will we ever live all together again? Each question was a knife, but I answered as gently as I could. Daddy and I both love you. That will never change. Protecting her heart became my mission, even when mine was still fractured. Holidays were the hardest. The first Christmas without Daniel felt hollow. I decorated a small tree in the apartment, strung popcorn garlands with Emily, and wrapped presents late into the night. She was happy, but I cried in the bathroom, muffling the sound with a towel. But with each passing year, I found new joy in doing things my way. We baked cookies with way too many sprinkles. We made paper snowflakes and taped them to the windows. Slowly, the emptiness began to fill with something else, resilience. 2 years later, Emily is thriving. She knows her parents love her, even if we're not together. She has adjusted to 2 homes, 2 bedrooms, 2 routines. She is still the bright, curious little girl she always was, and I know that's because I chose stability for her over chaos for myself. As for me, I've learned to enjoy my independence. My apartment feels like mine now, decorated with colors and books Daniel never would have tolerated. I adopted a second dog, something he always said was impractical. I laugh more easily. I sleep more soundly. I still have scars, but they remind me that I survived. There are nights I wonder about the future, if I'll ever trust someone again, if love is still possible for me. But I've stopped seeing those questions as wounds. They are just open spaces, waiting to be filled with whatever comes next. Sometimes I run into Daniel at school events. We exchange polite words, share small smiles for Emily's sake. Hannah is there too now, sitting beside him. The sight used to twist my stomach, but now it barely stares me. He made his choices, and I made mine. If there's one lesson I've carried, it's this: betrayal doesn't define you. Walking away, choosing yourself and your child's stability, that's what defines you. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you, please like and subscribe for more real-life stories. I have many more stories to share. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And before I go, I want to ask you, have you ever felt stuck in a relationship where leaving felt impossible? Share your thoughts or experiences below. I'd love to hear them.